It was a bit of a who's who in 80s and 90s rock kind of week here in the Capital Region. Dave Matthews Band returned to SPAC, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Pat Benatar played the Plaza, Everclear frontman Art Alexakis played Frog Alley Brewing, and the boss himself, Bruce Springsteen, announced that he's coming to the MVP Center next year. Coming up on this episode of The Eagle, we'll go over the week's top headlines.
There are few better places to be in the state in July than beautiful Saratoga County, including Saratoga Springs. That also makes it a potential vector for monkeypox.
And we'll talk about the implications of the erratic performance of a local broadcaster that went viral.
She was just very disoriented, at times a little incoherent. Her words were slurred.
This is The Eagle, a Times Union podcast, a look inside our newsroom. I'm Jessica Marshall.
If you're enjoying this podcast, take advantage of all the Times Union has to offer and support our efforts to bring in you award-winning journalism by becoming a Times Union member today. Go to timesunion.com/subscribe.
Welcome to The Eagle. I'm Jessica Marshall. Last weekend, a local television anchor's performance went viral after a disastrous live broadcast in which she appeared disheveled and dazed, slurring her words at times to the point of incoherence. News outlets across the world picked up the story of Heather Kovar's doomed Saturday evening broadcast on CBS 6. The video went viral. Responses on social media blew up. Viewers varied from expressing concern over a possible stroke or medical condition to accusing Kovar of being drunk on the air and a, quote, train wreck. Kovar had just returned to the anchor desk at CBS 6 from time off after her father died. She'd been in the midst of working an extended shift anchoring both the morning and evening newscasts at the station. She blamed exhaustion and sleep deprivation for the performance. The station suspended her from the air immediately, pending an investigation. The Times Union's Kristi Gustafson Barlette reports on local media, and she joins us now for her take on the situation and whether it's part of a larger issue that plagues local TV stations.
I mean, I'm astonished that it just made national news. It's all over the place. Did you think that it would go national like that?
I did. So Saturday, it was on the Saturday evening newscast, and my phone started with the texts and the direct messages and the calls almost immediately. And then I went and watched it, and as soon as I watched it, I said to the people I was with, oh, this is going to be viral by tomorrow morning.
I feel like as a society, we have a fascination with local news mishaps. On social media, they always go viral.
Oftentimes, things that happen on local news stations, right? Whether it's with a reporter or an anchor, somebody comes up behind a reporter, does something, whatever, you see those things go viral, and they're not as sort of significant and surprising as what happened on Saturday. And it's not like anything we ever really see that made me look at it and say, oh, this is going to get picked up, even though it's on a Saturday evening during a beautiful July day when far fewer people are watching the news than, say, maybe in March on a Wednesday night.
Can you just briefly explain from your perspective what happened?
Yes. So Heather Kovar, she is a reporter and anchor at CBS 6 Albany, also known as WRGB in Albany. She has been there for about 6 years. She has been the regular weekend anchor for several years, and she also reports. She was working what is called a split shift, which in this case means she anchored the morning newscast, so 7 and 8 a.m. And then she was also anchoring the evening newscast. So you can go home between those two, but it's a long day. You're basically working a full day. And then when there's a turnaround, you leave around midnight, and then you are back the next morning by, say, 6 a.m.
That sounds absolutely exhausting.
During the 6 p.m. newscast, she was there. It was her and the meteorologist on air. And she was just very disoriented, at times a little incoherent. Her words were slurred. She misidentified the meteorologist. The thing is, it was Craig Gold, and she referred to him as Craig Adams. There is a Craig Adams meteorologist at CBS 6 Albany, and she does work with him sometimes. So I can sort of see how that might happen.
I feel like that's a mistake anybody could make.
Exactly. Anybody could make that at any time. I think, your name's Jessica and there's a good chance I've called you Erica before, right? It can happen. I call my own children by their wrong names sometimes, but I think it was compounded by everything else where she wasn't entirely focused. She was definitely ad-libbing and she was sort of skipping around. Frankly, it was concerning to a lot of viewers. The initial reaction from everyone was not necessarily, oh, can you believe this? Let's make fun of her. A lot of the initial reaction was, oh my goodness, is she okay? Is she having some sort of medical episode? Is there something wrong? Because it was so out of character, not only for a person, but for Heather, because that's not her. She's professional. This is not how we've ever seen her before. So I think it was definitely alarming for people.
One of the reasons that news stories about local on-air talent are of so much interest to our audience is that we tend to form relationships with them, one-sided relationships, but they speak to us every single day. We trust them and what they tell us. So naturally, we'd be curious or concerned when something goes wrong, right?
I mean, can you talk more about how that's kind of manifested lately? It's not just Heather, it's also concern over Bob Kovacic and other folks that have had kind of not necessarily on-air mishaps, but have been cause for concern lately from viewers.
So that's actually a really good point, and I will touch on Bob Kovacic first, right? So he was out on a medical leave briefly last year, and I was regularly getting emails from people wondering, where is he? He's been around for decades, and people really connect with him, identify with him, associate him with the newscast, and they're genuinely worried, right? Of course, there's a little bit of nosiness because we all have a little bit of nosiness in us, but it's also, well, okay, it's almost like if you haven't seen your friend come around recently or a coworker hasn't been at work, it's natural to be concerned, right? An empathetic person is worried about those who they care about. And it's a different kind of care when it's somebody who's in media, because like you said, it's a one-sided relationship, but there's still that care. Another example is Christina Arangio. She was out for quite a bit. She was caring for her mother who wasn't feeling well and who unfortunately recently passed away. And she had posted about this and shared all of this on social media. But when you see that, viewers really connect and are genuinely concerned. Where is Christina? How is her mom doing? Or where is Bob? How is he feeling? Or we saw Heather. Is she okay? And I really do think social media has also contributed to this on a local and national level, because you do feel you get to know people because they talk about their parents, they talk about their children, they talk about their friends, they talk about what they're doing socially. So therefore you feel like you know them better. And then when something seems a little off or amiss, you worry about them and want to know what's going on.
Yes, but by the same token, you've also written about this. They are entitled to their privacy, right?
And, that's also something I struggle with as a reporter, because a large part of my beat is to report on local media. And that involves what's going on with them. What are they doing? And for example, when COVID was fairly new to the area, Brian Cody and Kristi Gustafson both got COVID. And everyone was like, where are they? Why haven't they been on air? What's going on? And they only missed like a day or so, but people still wondered because it was early. And I reached out to them. I said, are you okay with me writing about the fact you had COVID? Because again, it was definitely news back then, because I think this was 2020. And then with Bob Kovacic, people were always asking me what's going on. And I said, I felt torn because again, you're a public person and the public cares about you, but also you're entitled to your privacy. Think about if any of us are out sick or dealing with something on a personal level, whether it's physical, mental, or otherwise, I don't need everyone knowing about that.
Everybody's human here.
We are all human, and we all suffer, we all experience pain, we all experience loss, we all experience illness. But here's the other side of that. If readers, viewers, listeners were not interested in us, then we wouldn't really be successful at our job, because in 2022, a big part of being a good on-air or digital person, reporter, whatever part of media you're working in, is having that connection with your audience. And part of that connection is having your audience follow you and care about you. So it's a very fine line, and it's sticky. You're entitled to your privacy, but you've built up this public persona by having people care, by sharing. And now you understandably and deservedly want the privacy. It's a blurry line, basically.
Let's go back to Heather. Let's kind of round it out with Heather here. Heather Kovar. She was removed from the air after this incident. She's been suspended. What has come out of that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I want to actually clarify, because I feel like it has been reported incorrectly on outlets around the world, frankly. Heather's contract was set to expire. This is true. I've known this for weeks. This is not something she's just saying now. I didn't know the exact date, but I knew it was coming up and it was about to expire. And I heard this directly from her a while ago. It turns out that date is July 31st. She told the station on Friday, which I guess was July 8th, right? The day before all this happened, that she was not renewing her contract. She was not coming back. She was preparing to move, packing up her apartment, everything like that. Then this happened on Saturday. And then she was suspended pending further investigation. But some outlets are saying, oh, she quit after this happened, or her contract wasn't renewed after this happened. But that is not true. That is not what happened. She is suspended pending further investigation. That said, we're in the middle of July at this point, and July 31st is only a couple of weeks away. So it's not like I don't see her coming back for a couple of days, depending on what the investigation finds, and then leaving again.
And at the same time, though, on-air talent have been leaving local stations and the industry at almost an alarming rate, leaving severe staffing shortages. I mean, what does this all say about the industry and the industry locally?
I personally think one of the reasons that she was working a double shift is every station in the Capital Region, right? The 4 main stations, we've got 6, 10, 13, and Spectrum. All of them have seen a huge loss of on-air staff in the last, 6, 7 months. And this is not new to 2022. We saw it in 2021. We saw it in 2020. So as a result, you have fewer people. You're not necessarily able to replace them right away. So the people who are there are working more, which is what happens at any workplace, right? And you can break at some point. It can be so incredibly challenging. So when you don't have enough people to put on air, or you don't have enough people to produce and run behind the scenes, things can happen. Look what happened when Heather was told that she could go home, or she left after this happened on Saturday. They brought in Greg Floyd. Greg Floyd is the weekday evening anchor. So that's not typically the person you would see on the weekends. But there's not a lot of staff. Melissa Lee had left. She moved away. And Jack Lamson left. He took a different job. Julia Dunn, she's on maternity leave. And these are all morning people. But Lindsay Smith recently announced that she was leaving. And there were a couple other people too who have left. So they're just down to a really small staff. And they were working with what they had. And of course, there's lots of criticism from the outside on how it was all handled. And I think we can all look back and say, oh, this should have been done and that should have been done. And I agree with that. But there was also a lot going on behind the scenes that I think that no one except the people who are actually there fully understand. And that can affect it as well. But we're all human. This was certainly horrible. I mean, Heather, we have spoken. She absolutely regrets everything that happened. She feels awful. I don't think it's any surprise that she's embarrassed, because who wouldn't be embarrassed? I think 100% of people who had this happen would be embarrassed because it's public, right? It happened publicly. We've all been embarrassed at some point, but we all haven't been embarrassed publicly. And I think that she does deserve some sympathy and some grace and some understanding, especially until this investigation plays out, until we all fully understand, if we do at some point, exactly what happened on Saturday.
After the break, we'll go over the week's top headlines with Times Union Editor-in-Chief Casey Seiler.
If you're enjoying this podcast, take advantage of all the Times Union has to offer and support our efforts to bring in you award-winning journalism by becoming a Times Union member today. Go to timesunion.com/subscribe.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Eagle, a Times Union podcast. I'm Jessica Marshall. All right, now let's discuss what appeared in the Times Union and on timesunion.com this week.
We are back again, as we are every week, with Times Union Editor-in-Chief Casey Seiler. We're going to go over the top stories this week. We'll start with the fact that the New York State Court of Appeals Chief Judge, Janet DiFiore, is stepping down. She announced that this week. She says it's time to move on, but we also reported that she might be facing an ethics probe. So can you tell us what's happening there?
Something of a surprise by Janet DiFiore, who is a former Westchester County District Attorney, former chairwoman of the snake-bit State Joint Commission on Public Ethics early in its existence, and then went on to become Andrew Cuomo's first nominated chief judge, succeeding Judge Lippman. It's not exactly a stunner. She is 66, which means she would have 4 years before kind of mandatory retirement age. If you go back in sort of the modern era, most chief judges serve for about 5 to 7 years. And as you noted, the judge leaves or will leave office at the end of August as an ethics investigation is proceeding. This is going to be conducted by the Commission on Judicial Accountability, which is, unlike so many state watchdogs, really pretty effective and actually transparent, at least when their investigations are complete. And the investigation involving the judge concerns a complaint from the president of the court workers union, essentially, who was the subject of a complaint because he communicated to Judge DeFiore what she saw, and I think what most reasonable people would conclude was something of a threat in response to him being subject of criticism about being racially insensitive, not just him, but also court workers in general. And he responded by saying, in effect, how would you like it if negative gossip or allegations about your personal life, Judge DeFiore, were pasted all over every courtroom in the state? Now, that resulted in a disciplinary hearing. The judge sent what is described as an ex parte letter to the disciplinary hearing officer, encouraging the hearing officer to use the powers granted to her to make a serious statement in doling out discipline to this union president, who was disciplined for this communication with the judge, is now retired, but still retains the role of union president. So the judge said that this investigation is wholly unconnected to her decision to step down, that she's ready for kind of the last chapter of her legal career. But there you go.
All right, more on that on our Capital Confidential section of timesunion.com. The Roman Catholic Diocese of Albany, we have done some reporting on the situation with folks bringing lawsuits against the diocese in the last 2 weeks. The diocese and the plaintiffs for the victims met this week. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, this was a Monday meeting between the plaintiffs' attorneys, attorneys for the diocese, and the judge who will be overseeing the more than 400 civil cases that have been brought under the Child Victims Act against the diocese by those who allege that they were subjected to sexual abuse, either by priests or those connected to the diocese. In recent weeks, we've reported that the diocese has proposed a mediation scheme, blueprint, that would resolve these cases. Plaintiffs' attorneys at this meeting on Monday that Brendan Lyons listened in on expressed concern that the mediation plan, if they were to adopt it, must not result in essentially hitting the pause button on the pretrial discovery process. So the plaintiffs' attorneys wanted this process to go on, basically saying that the diocese shouldn't be able to squelch or slow roll the release of documents about what the diocese knew and what it did about these allegations. Of course, the diocese, including former Bishop Howard Hubbard, admitted in a deposition that he and other diocesan leaders essentially covered up some of these allegations and just kind of shuffled priests off to so-called treatment and then put them back into positions where, in some cases at least, they allegedly went on to do more abuse. And then later in the week, it was announced, and Brendan reported, that a Massachusetts attorney, Paul Finn, who was named Lawyer of the Year in 2003 for his work resolving claims against the Boston Diocese, has been tapped along with a New York City attorney named Simone Lelchuk, who specializes in mediation and kind of the allocation of settlement funds, to work on the Albany cases as well. The Boston diocese, of course, one of the biggest national stories, and really kind of the story that kicked off the kind of wave of investigations and media attention into clerical abuse, involved 552 cases. Now, when you consider the difference in population size between Albany, which has more than 400 cases against the diocese, and Boston, you realize what the diocese is up against. The diocese, of course, has said, hey, look, if we're forced to continue going to trial for these cases as are scheduled, we're just going to declare bankruptcy, which is essentially going to be a great big pause button on many of these cases. So that is the state of play as we sit here today.
All right. Again, more on that on Capital Confidential, and you can go back and listen to the last 2 episodes of this podcast where you'll hear more about Brendan's reporting. Okay, moving up to Saratoga County, where that county is the, I don't want to say lucky winner, lucky recipient, but for lack of a better term, is the recipient of the allocation of monkeypox vaccines. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, Saratoga County, because it's gorgeous. There are few better places to be in the state in July than beautiful Saratoga County, including Saratoga Springs. That also makes it a potential vector for monkeypox. And so that is why Saratoga County is the only upstate county. And no, Jess, we're not going to get into the question of where upstate begins.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yes, exactly. To receive allocations from the state of monkeypox. And a monkeypox vaccine, I should say. And monkeypox is something you absolutely, positively do not want to get. It can result in flu-like symptoms and really nasty sores. And of course, it's a particular concern among the LGBTQ community. So I obviously would encourage anyone who is potentially at risk of monkeypox, get yourself to the Spa City and beautiful Saratoga County. Enjoy the races and enjoy hopefully not getting monkeypox.
Speaking of the races, today we are talking on Thursday, and it is also opening day of the Saratoga Race Course season, starting a little bit early this year. Tell us all about it.
What I can tell you is that both people who run the track and people who run businesses in Saratoga County, especially in Saratoga Springs, told Pete DeMola for a story that ran in print last Sunday that they are exceedingly optimistic for this season, that the kind of lifting of at least public concern about the pandemic they feel is going to result in big crowds. They've already seen increases in pre-track meet foot traffic on Broadway, for example, and they feel really good about it. Yeah, the season kicks off today. As you noted, we're talking Thursday and runs through early September. The Times-Union will, of course, be handicapping and reporting on the sports aspect of this, daily, as well as reporting on the various cultural and social events and offerings that surround it, everything from SPAC to gala, formal events, and hat competitions. So it's going to be another great summer to be at the Saratoga track.
Again, go to timesunion.com, hit up our sports section for the handicapping, and just see all of the wonderful content that we're going to produce. There's going to be some exciting stuff this summer. All right, Casey, thank you so much. We will check back in with you next week.
Just my pleasure.
As always, you can learn more about all of the topics and the issues that we discuss on this podcast at timesunion.com. All right, that's it for this week. I'm Jessica Marshall. We'll be back next week with another look inside the newsroom here at the Times-Union. In the meantime, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, or head on over to timesunion.com for the latest news and features. The Eagle is a production of the Times-Union. It's produced and edited by me, Jessica Marshall, with help from the Times-Union digital team and the newsroom. Special thanks this week to Casey Seiler and Kristi Gustafson Barlette for their contribution to this episode.